So in Woods 2, everybody's going to be making drawers of varying types. We have 2 products in here. One has 6 drawers on it that are very small, and one has 2 drawers on it that are a little bit larger than the 6 drawer case. What I want to talk today about is the way that drawers are constructed. And there are a lot of different ways that drawers are constructed. Okay? First off, if you're using hardware, like on these drawers right over here, this is an overlay drawer, which means that when it sits on there, it sits over top of the face frame. Okay? Here's a door that's an overlay door. It sits over top of the face frame behind it. A lot of doors are inset doors, where they'll sit and they'll be flush with the face frame. It's going to be lined up with it. It's more of a shaker style. And more modernly, they've been doing the overlay doors because they're a lot easier. They're cheaper too for people to use and to put on the cabinets. What we're doing, however, is not going to have hardware. It's going to be using just the material that we work with in here, which is wood. So a few options of how to assemble these, because remember, you're pulling on this and pushing it back over and over again, so it does have some, takes somewhat of a beating. 3 drawers in here that I think are acceptable drawers for us to use for our designs would be number 1, which is called a lock rabbit. Lock rabbit drawer. And you can kind of see what's going on there, where the front of the drawer has those notches cut out, like this, on either end. And then the side piece is just a piece that has a groove cut in it, going across the grain there. A dado. So that the way they fit together is like so. And that is a mechanical connection that the wood together with that stays that way. What happens with a lot of students is when they're taking these apart and fitting them, they're not careful with taking them apart, and you realize this part here is just going with that grain, so it could break off pretty easily. So if you're lazy, or if you're being very rough with the drawer here, you'll chip these off, and that becomes a pain in the butt to deal with. Let's see if I have any, like here. You can see that corner there has been taken off of that one there, down here. This is a nice way of doing it. It creates a lot of surface area for glue to go into, and it doesn't require any kind of mechanical, like a nail or a screw to fasten it. That's the middle of the road one. It takes a little bit to set up on the table saw, but it's not overly burdensome. The most difficult one to do would be a half-blind dovetail joint. This is the one that's been used historically quite often. So here's an old drawer. Here are the dovetails on it. Those are half-blind dovetails because you don't see them in the front. Okay? If I were to grab some other dovetails, I think I have something here. Here's an example of through dovetails. So here would be a side of your drawer, and it goes through, and you actually see the end grain on the face of the drawer. It's a nice strong drawer, but you see that the joint there, and that's really not desirable. You'd want to have it recessed back, like this one is. This is a through dovetail. This is a half blind dovetail where you don't see it past that front part there. That is a little bit more handwork, a little bit more being able to use a handsaw, because much of this is done with a handsaw. This is done with a table saw. The easiest of the 3 that are up here, I'll just write down what that is there. This is called a half blind dovetail. The shape of the joint there is what's considered the dove's tail. Tail of the joint. The last one is just a straight rabbit. And what that would look like would be like this. This would be your drawer front. The piece there is cut off to be the exact thickness of your side that fits into it. You would glue this, but gluing would not be enough. We would have to put some pins into the edge here. So I would take, right here, I put some nails going down into this. That's kind of illustrated on here. We would have nails that would come from the side and go into the face of the drawer. And that would help to hold that glue joint there, and give a mechanical fastener to help hold that permanently. Regardless of what you're going to use there, you want to start thinking about what kind of materials you have to gather up to do this. If you're doing this drawer here, because we need to have this area here where the nails are going to go into be somewhat substantial, we want this piece here to be at its thinnest 5/8 of an inch thick. Because then we can have an 1/8 here and then still have a 1/2 of an inch to be able to put nails into. If we have too small of an area there, we run the risk of our nails coming out and popping out in front of the drawer face and the back of the drawer face. So we want to make sure we have enough area there to get the nails into. Our sides for the drawers will all be 1/2 inch. And the back also be 1/2 inch. If you're doing this drawer here, really it should be that this is also thick again, because when you look at the one that I've done, see how thin the face of the drawer is going to be, where that comes onto? So if that drawer is hanging out a little bit, you see the joinery, and you don't want that. You want that to be hidden. So we would make this a little bit wider. So these are both 1/2 inch right here. We would make them 5/8 and a 1/2 inch. All of your material that's going to be for your sides and your back are all going to be the same thickness. So we said a 1/2 inch. So you would go ahead and get stock prepared, and you would plane all of it to final thickness at the same time. And you would allow yourself to have extra pieces to go ahead and make test cuts on so that the joinery all fits how you want it to fit. So how would you figure that out? Well, if you have 6 drawers and the depth of the drawer is 7 inches and the back of the drawer is 7 inches, that's not what it is, but you'll figure that out by measuring your openings for yours. And the other side is 7 inches. Well, we want it's 21 inches, so we'd want to give ourselves like 24 inches at 1/2 inch thick for that one drawer, and that's one of 6 drawers. So you have to multiply what you need for that times 6, and then allow yourself to have wood for an extra drawer that you can do some test cutting on. Another thing to mention here is that a lot of this wood that we use for this, like in this case here, the face of this is cherry. The back of this is poplar. The bottom of it's poplar. Most often, when we do a drawer, we do the front out of the material that we're using, because it's generally the more expensive material, and we do the sides and the back and the bottom out of a cheaper material. In this area of the world, we use poplar because poplar is a very inexpensive wood that we can get that all out of. So it's a secondary wood. Now you've already done your bill of materials, so when you go back and look at that, you'll see what you've paid for, what you've allowed for, a secondary wood or one of your primary woods. Okay? But anyways, all your drawer faces. So if I was doing the 6 drawer one, I would allow myself to have one board be that it would be all 6 of my drawer fronts. Why? Because when you look at this, you'll see that the whole thing is all from the same board. The grain from this drawer here will go down, you'll see it kind of work out to be all the same piece. If we go ahead and we just grab 6 random pieces of wood and plane them all down to 5/8 of an inch, it'll be noticeable that you've done that. You have a better looking, more thoughtful looking project if you go ahead and find a piece of wood that's going to be adequate size to get everything you need, all your drawer fronts out of it. And then we cut it down from there. So we know that all drawer fronts will be the same thickness from that, and we know that the grain pattern would work. And I would even label this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that I knew how they were supposed to line up. Actually, I would make that 4, 5, 6, whatever. As long as you remember how you had that, it would work out that way. Okay? So our sides and our back of our drawers are going to be 1/2 inch. And our fronts are going to be 5/8. You have to elect what kind of joinery you're going to use for the front of that and talk to me about that. We'll talk about how we're going to put it together. The easiest one is the rabbet one that we put nails in, but it's also the least strong, or the weakest. Next one is the lock rabbet joint, and that is a fairly strong joint, particularly because the drawers that we're making are really small. And the reality is, because they're so small, they're not going to have racking when you open and close them. That one is a fine one to do because it's strong enough to do it. Okay? The last one is the strongest one, and that's a dovetail, half bind dovetail drawer. So when you come into class, you should know what kind of drawer you want to make, and you should know what kind of material you're going to be using for all parts of the drawer, the face versus the back side of it. All right?